Hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast for the recently deceased, episode 8. I'm Nate Roberts.
I am Rodney Godak.
All right, and tonight
How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Excellent. It's been a week.
Good.
What are we doing tonight, man?
Tonight we're going to be talking about Slapface, um, which is new to Shudder a couple weeks ago or
Wow.
last week, and the last thing Mary saw. And what's a little different this week than last is I enjoyed both films.
Yeah, this was fun. Look, any new to streaming on a platform like Shudder can be hit or miss. It's a grab bag type thing where you hope for the best. And we both don't like to look too much into films because we don't want to have things spoiled or know the synopsis because it can take away a lot of the mystique of a new film that you discover. And I think we're both pleasantly surprised and happy to watch these films. And so I'm excited to talk about them, compare and contrast.
Yeah, yeah. One thing they both had in common, or I should say two things they both had in common, is they were both kind of loosely based on witches, or witches were part of the story, and they were actually kind of billed that way. Um, and then you watch them both, and you're like, okay, well, this wasn't about witches. And then the other one, you're like, oh, this wasn't about witches either. But they were kind of sold that way by like the guy who writes the plot synopsis who maybe didn't watch the movie, or the guy who makes the trailer. These jobs of people that like maybe they don't fully know it. Whoever gets assigned to it, like you intern write the copy on this movie, it's about witches. They
Yeah.
they write a one paragraph blurb about it, not really knowing, or maybe sometimes they do it on purpose to kind of mislead the audience. But
Yeah.
so there's that, and
Hmm.
then they're both incredibly short. They both clock in under the 90-minute mark. I
Yeah.
think I
Which
think
is nice from time to time.
Yeah,
Succinct.
honestly, I did watch these back to back, and it was nice to only spend 3 hours watching two full stories. Um,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
agree. I did the same thing, did the double feature
yeah,
over the weekend, and it was enjoyable to go back to back and to just kind of live in this kind of universe because they were both different enough but similar enough to kind of feed the feelings that I was having and going through processing. So it was a lot of fun double feature.
yeah, especially coming off of Nightmare Alley, which was like 2.5 hours long, and just and felt even longer. Which we can talk about at another date.
Yeah, I still haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I don't know when I'll fit it in, but we have a pretty tight schedule with what we do and the things that we watch, and so at some point I'll catch it. I was excited about it, and we definitely talked about it whenever we discussed Antlers at
Yeah.
the end of last year. But so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it still has a lot of things going for it, on paper. Like the cast is phenomenal.
Mhm.
Guillermo del Toro is fantastic. Like there's just so many things in the win
Well, and
column.
all the actors in it are all A-list type people,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's the thing that was interesting. Whenever you mentioned that you weren't as hot on it as a lot of other people were, Oscar noms came out today. This is Tuesday, and it's nominated for several, a couple. But I had just saw that they were. It didn't have a great box office at first, and they're starting to re-release it in black and white. And when I mentioned that to you because I think that they intentionally shot it and lit it or colorized a lot of the costumes to still read appropriately in black and white. They just weren't necessarily stuck with it having to be a black and white film, and so that certain select areas or markets are getting a black and white version. Do you think that that would aid or
Uh,
hinder?
to be honest, I think I would have enjoyed it more in
Okay.
black and white. There's something about it, and Kate Blanchett as well actually has done. I don't know if handful is the right word, but a couple of these modern noir type films. And the
Mm-hmm.
last one I saw had George Clooney and Tobey Maguire and was black and white, The Good German.
Okay.
Um, so, you know, when you're The original was shot in 1947. The film is based in 1941. Um, when you're trying to recapture that noir or neo noir kind of feel,
Yeah,
I really think the black and white definitely helps.
sure.
So
Well, we'll see.
I'm interested to see if it catches legs or if it gets legs.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just an afterthought or they're trying to salvage box office type stuff. Not sure what the intent was,
Right,
or if it was just like a cool little treat, like, ooh, check out this other cut, Snyder
sure,
cut version of Nightmare Alley.
right. Well, I mean, we don't want
Even
it
though
any.
it's just color.
Yeah, it shouldn't be longer. If anything, they could shorten it a little bit. In fact, when we
Yeah.
talk about it, don't let me forget to tell you why it should have been shorter.
Okay.
Okay, to the main event.
Yep. Cool.
Slapface. Slapface. The story of two brothers. The older brother is raising the younger brother. We can assume he's at least 21, although we really don't get ages.
Yeah.
We don't get what grade the younger kid is in. Uh,
Seems middle school.
yeah, definitely 13, 14 tops.
Right.
Maybe as young as 12, but I doubt it. Um, then we have, oh, right. Also, we don't really know how much time passes through this film, and it does feel a little wonky. Um, in moments. Like we don't know if it's been days or weeks, um, and they don't really do anything to help the audience out there. Maybe it was on purpose, maybe not.
Sure.
So the movie starts off with are they playing
Right off the
slap?
bat, they're playing the game.
They're playing Slapface, yeah. So
Yeah.
Slapface, they're just slapping each other in the face, one at a
It
time,
is.
back and forth. And it seems like, well, one of them can say harder, and then they both kind of escalate a little bit. And it's just a thing that they do. It's in being introduced as something normal uh,
Right.
for them. Um,
So, and like the way the film starts, to me, I was kind of, we talked about Death Valley last week and how right away you kind of know a little bit of cringe, like this is going to be what it's going to be probably.
right.
This one has a very dark, serious, somber type tone with, because they say a couple words, and you just see the slapping, and so it's a graphic kind of in your face sort of domestic like trauma type thing that could be happening because you don't know how much it's a willing participant in this activity that they're doing, and there's obviously a disparity in age, and so it's really not cool to be doing it to your sibling. So there's discomfort right off the bat and like trauma that's occurring that you're already kind of, you have a vested interest in the kid's character, but and then they show all the demon imagery. There's the a lot of string instruments, cellos that are really kind of setting a somber tone, and it with religion and other different stuff like etchings from books that you see with the credits. And so I love the way that it let me know right away what kind of a movie that to take it more serious or to follow the darkness that it was going to be exposing or getting into. I think that it did a great job of letting me clue me in as to how to approach this movie from the start. I really enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. It definitely caught my attention right away. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like paying attention. I'm not like, oh, what's going on, just like kind of watching it out of the corner of my eye.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think it what moves to the bar, right? Like we jump right in. Um, the older brother is having some drinks. He flirts with a girl, and then it's the next morning, and she's making them breakfast.
Yeah.
So,
What? So the other thing I don't think you mentioned with the two films, the similarity, they're both upstate New York.
oh
This one
yes,
takes place in Fishkill, New York, which is
Fishkill.
not upstate, but it's technically upstate. Um, and
Yep.
so it's rural. and that's clear in this. And so perhaps a towny bar chick would be totally okay with going home with a guy and hanging out and cooking breakfast and sticking around for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
she's completely comfortable and like already like they've spent a night together. She's really just like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, and she's making breakfast, and uh, she's talking to the younger brother there, like she's almost like already a babysitter. Yeah, on the
Yeah,
babysitter. I wouldn't give her the stepmom level yet, but she
right.
does get there pretty quickly.
Yeah,
But she kind of starts
that's the
off,
one.
yeah,
The one thing that I would say for me, like, just pulled out a little bit of the reality of the relationships that they have, the three of them, is that it the comfort that they have as a unit, or at least the relationship, it just seems too quick, and it's a little bit disjarring, or just jarring, and that just pulls me a little bit out. Like maybe it was just could have been written or described in a little bit differently, but they want to get to the point where that relationship has a reason or a purpose or stakes for what's occurring later. So I
right,
get the need to expedite that process. I just think that it could have been executed a little bit cleaner, and that's the one thing in this film is that dynamic in the house that just took me a little bit away because it seemed a little bit unrealistic.
yeah,
Outside of that, everything else that's going on is really great. And the one thing that happened before that bar scene, which I took note of because I thought it was cool, it's like sort of a horror trope that happens in a lot of films, is when the kid goes to he takes his mother's photo to Wakefield at the building, and he has a little blade with him, and he goes and he slits his thumb.
oh
It's like
sure, you're right,
anytime anyone has to give blood or do something with blood in a ritual, they always find the most awful thing that you could think of, and it's always on the hand, and it's the most. It's like I like that it was sort of a nod or an homage to that trope, uh, and it was unsettling. Every time I hate those scenes. I always wince because it's just that I don't like the idea of slicing my thumb open.
yeah, yeah, and he puts it on the he like drips it on the pitcher and he like buries it
Yeah,
like pretty like
yeah,
shallow in front of the witch's house, or as the local folk tale is the Virago witch. It's her home. It's this
yeah,
giant house. It's like a mansion, and it's
hmm
practically condemned, but like obviously they're not tearing it
yeah.
down.
Boarded up,
It's
right?
boarded up, yeah, and it's a ghost story for the kids, stay away from that house kind of thing.
Yeah, and everyone knows. And I think it's even that first night they clue you in that there's trouble with the kid, or he's processing stuff in a certain kind of way where I don't remember the exact events that happened because the sheriff comes to the bar and tells the brother like we picked him up, and
Right.
I can't remember what he said he got into, that he was down the road or he they picked him up somewhere and he was going to do something if they didn't grab him and bring him in, and you got to keep him in control, you only get so many chances. I don't think we know what he actually did, but you can obviously see that the kid's on the wrong path and lashing out in some kind of way or dealing with shit.
Right.
And
Yeah, and he needs his older brother to be a better father figure, and
yeah,
obviously the sheriff knows that and is a family friend, so he's given him
they
another
allude
he's
that he had
yeah,
too much closeness to the mother in the past.
yeah. So he
Uh,
he says you're running out of get out of jail free cards. Um, so
and also played by Dan Hedaya, who's
y-
been in a ton of other
oh
stuff. I
yeah,
didn't realize it at first. I was like, I know
yeah,
this voice is familiar, but you don't
yeah,
see his face really well until much later in the movie. And I was like, oh, it's that guy.
yeah, yeah. The guy's in everything. He's in
Yeah,
tons of stuff. Yeah,
yeah, I know.
you'll
I pulled it
recognize
up
him.
because
Yeah,
I was like, what? A couple things, because all I could think of at the time was Adam's Family. It's the only thing I could think of. And then I
oh
saw
sure.
his IMDb of all the other shit he's been in, and I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. It's that guy that's in a ton of stuff.
Yeah, for the folks at home, yeah, Mulholland Drive, The Usual Suspects.
Hmm.
He's he's the the detective, not the main detective, but the detective whose office the main detective uses in The Usual Suspects. Not that that's a big deal, but I actually just watched Usual Suspects like 2 weeks ago, so it's fresh.
Okay, gotcha. So so Slapface, from there, the other group that gets introduced, I can't remember if it had already happened, but the other characters that are a part of this film are, um, well, we should say Tom is the older brother, Lucas is the
Is
main
the yeah.
character, Anna is the love interest, and then there's the twins, or no, Anna is the younger one, I think, or is
No,
Anna
no, no.
the
Tom
Anna's the
Anna's
girlfriend?
Tom's girlfriend.
I can't remember
Mariah
the
Mariah
Mariah. Okay,
is
and the twins,
Lucas's and the twins,
right?
and so the twins
So
are
yeah,
Mariah's friends, and but they're also bullies.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
They are awful people.
Yes.
Um, and so Mariah's trying to play both sides, where she is a fan of Lucas and wants to be Lucas's friend slash girlfriend, or figure out they've got feelings or something. She wants to explore that, but the twins just want to cause pain and want to bully Lucas. And so they force Mariah to do certain things that maybe she doesn't want to, but she wants their friendship. And so there's an interesting dynamic that goes on there.
Yes.
And that's pretty much the whole stage that's set. Is so Lucas is dealing with some shit. He has the Wakefield building that he's familiar with, and he's sort of like a loner, ostracized, trying to find his way. Doesn't have a set group of people to confide or process or talk to. Doesn't obviously have the father figure. And now that his father figure, his brother, has a relationship, he has even less of a chance of building that relationship and
Right.
getting on the right path through
Yeah.
his guidance, because his brother's
You
just
can.
dealing with his own
Yeah.
shit.
You can tell that he resents the girlfriend right away,
Yeah,
because he
she.
starts getting
I
getting.
guess he doesn't eat eggs. That's what she says because she tries cooking.
Yeah. I think he starts lashing out at home like right away and getting like he's very short with his brother and he just kind of
Mhm.
keeps leaving the house. Um, so
Yeah, exploring.
we see him get picked on by the three girls and then just him and Moira later or Mariah later, where we find out that they're actually like boyfriend and girlfriend and she apologizes for the way she treats him when the girls are around. They're her only friends, right? So she's got a you know, kind of self-esteem thing going on too.
Hmm.
Um, then, okay, so
Well, so let's get to the point where now, at some point, he's like, out and exploring.
yeah,
He gets with the twins and Mariah at the Wakefield
right,
building,
right.
and they
That was what I was
dare,
coming to next,
yeah,
right? Yeah. So they
they
dare
dare
him,
him to spend, or he, I think, offers, like, he wants to show off or say, "I'll do this." Are you gonna do
right?
it? Like, I'm gonna spend this much time. So he goes in and he explores, and he doesn't give a shit. He's like,
Yeah,
"This is nothing. I've been through worse in my life, so I'm just walking through
right,
here like it's no big deal." And they're keeping track with the timer. It's like it's a, which is another classic thing, going to the scary house or whatever. How far can you go? And we'll
right.
keep track. It's, that's a well-known thing, and it's really neat to see that as well. Like, they're paying the respect to that idea.
Yep. So
So he goes in.
he's in there for a while. They fully count down. He stays in longer. He's got like a broom. He starts attacking the wall.
Yeah, making
Uh,
noise as if
yeah,
something's going on.
yeah. And then and then he does try to like he turns to leave, and then this figure just grabs him from behind, and he starts screaming and struggling, and the girls hear it and they run.
Hmm.
Um,
And he just wakes up outside
right, with
with
Mariah,
Mariah.
and yeah, I think this is where they first kind of talk about sorry that
Hmm.
I'm mean when the girls are around, and like he just kisses her, which is like really weird and awkward, and
Hmm.
she just like leaves and is like call me later.
Right.
Um, so
So, as shortly after that, the events with the dog happen, I think.
yes, the dog.
I think that's
Um,
the second instance that you see it. And so the poem that is there that people recite, and I think I can't remember when he mentioned, but he starts singing it. Uh,
right.
was it first she was the breeze, then she was a tree, Virago, Virago. Then she was a witch. Virago, Virago, and that's sort of the rhyme.
Yeah,
And so like he's like kind of he knows that he's singing it from time to time, but he's out in the woods just doing his thing, and he hears a dog barking, and I think you hear people calling for a dog,
yeah,
and he freaks out, starts running because the dog's chasing him, and he runs, 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 and then he sees the figure
right.
of Virago,
Virago,
and
yes.
she takes care of that dog.
Oh, yes. Yes, she does. And so we should mention now that the figure, the monster, is what it's called in the credits. Um, is very tall, like
Mm-hmm.
6'6", 6.5", definitely over 6 feet. And the face is your classic like 40s cartoon depiction of a witch's face. Like it's got the
Yes.
crooked nose, it's like dark green skin with the
Mm-hmm.
big wart, and the face is also
Yeah.
all kind of gross anyway. And then the outfit is like just tattered rags and some ropes, tied around, and
Yeah.
it's a really it looks good. Like
Yeah.
yeah, like for a it's a guy in a suit, but it looks great.
Yeah. That's the thing. The whole time this movie, when we talked about the intro credits, it sets the tone. It continues that through the whole film, where it's atmospheric. The shots and the color, it's all just natural, and it doesn't have bright brights. It's fall, and it just has that kind of coldness to it. And the same happens with sound design. The sound is very well produced, where everything, the events that are occurring, the dialogue, it's all shot professionally, looks professional, it sounds professional. It's this is a well crafted and well made film as far as the cinematography and the sound goes. And so the costume and the makeup effects, it's adequate with what it should be. And I think that the way they do the monster is perfect for the kind of tone that the movie is. It's enough information without being like all about what it looks like and is.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I think um, for being, I mean, you want to call it independent, maybe an independent
Yeah, it's
film. It's
got to be a
definitely,
low budget.
yeah, the budget, yeah, it's definitely, um, it feels. I don't want to use the word simple because that makes it sound easy, and it can't be easy, to make a good movie. But
Right. Well, it's got limited amount of scope. It has like, and that's the thing that I like about it. It's like
right,
other films that we've talked about. This is reminiscent of Antlers and the fact that there's a handful of characters and it's a small, narrow, focused film. This has the same thing, and the what it's about is direct, and it knows what it's about, and it is just continuing to hit that note and to talk about it and to just try to flesh out a lot of um, other related information or visuals and relationships that kind of help drive home the same point of isolation or trauma and grief or loss, and how people process those things. And so it knows what it wants to do, and it just continues to try to flesh out that story and give more depth and intrigue in how it's telling a story about a kid going through this stuff.
yeah.
And so
Okay, so the dog. All right. So now after that, he's running through the woods, like he keeps going through this stuff where he just doesn't want to be home because of the girlfriend, and
mhm,
now they're fighting, right? So
yeah,
because once again, we don't know how
arguing.
much
Yeah.
time has passed, and was the only like ambiguous thing about the movie that I just wish I knew a little bit more about how long everything was taking. Um, he just runs across her in the woods, and he kind of gets freaked out. He goes to leave. Excuse me.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Then
But like he starts to see it as a friend, and
right,
because
right.
he
So
has no one else, and so it's like, oh, you're not attacking me. He gets that after she protects him from the dog.
right,
The next time, he's like, okay, you're not hurting me, and so I'm gonna be okay with being around you. And in fact, because no one else is with me, I'm going to go along with you.
Right.
And so they befriend one another.
Yes. And so now they have a this like meet up relationship where she's always quiet, but he feels comforted when he's around her. Like he does hug her at one point. I think he also rides her piggyback.
Yeah, they
Uh,
go through that.
yeah,
Hmm.
there's a scene where he's on her back, which I thought was funny. Um, all right, so what are we coming up on?
Um, so things start to, break down with the brother and their relationship, and the girl leaves and then
Right,
comes back, and so she comes back at a moment when Lucas isn't around. I think maybe he's out talking with the girls, the twins, and like I don't know. I think that might have been when he went approached him at the pool. I can't remember, but Anna comes back and no one's around. The brother's at work. Lucas is out, and
right,
she starts looking through the house. This was sort of a funny moment. I laughed about it, but I mean, it's probably just like it's a weird thing that should probably be more serious. She starts going through stuff. She finds like the nudie book of like where there's like dirty pictures in a journal, or like maybe it's like a
yeah,
whack off type thing. But like there's a hand drawn vagina like
yeah,
in it.
yeah, yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I remember that age. I was like,
Yeah, yeah, right.
uncomfortable.
And it definitely obviously belongs to Lucas, right? Like
Yeah, and she makes the face. She's like, ugh,
yeah.
like yeah, you shouldn't be going through the kid's shit.
Yeah.
She finds the gun, which the brother had talked about before,
Right.
and that's when the monster is also in the house because the monster
Right.
was interested in Lucas and is exploring it, and
Right.
knows that Anna's been around and she doesn't like Anna,
Right.
and so
Uh,
that's where yeah they see each other and she freaks out.
yeah. And
She
she
tries to shoot it.
she shoots the monster, and then we and cut away. So we don't
Yeah.
really know what happens yet, but we will find out shortly.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it's because and she goes to the house because the girl's putting up posters for the dog that say it was lost. She knows that the dog was killed, or I think Lucas buries the dog.
right.
Remember?
Right.
And he
Right. And
tells her that
she
it's the third funeral he's been to. The
yes
second one was his uncle. Seemingly, the first one was his mother
was the mother. Yeah.
and
And
or the
the
parents.
and the she did catch him washing the blood off of
Yeah, yeah,
himself.
yeah. So, so she comes back to talk to him about the flyer. She leaves the flyer. She finds all that other stuff. She sees the monster. She tries to shoot it. Now the monster's taking care of her. Lucas comes back to see that this has occurred because he sees the thing and he puts two and two together. Like, and he's like, "Oh my god, what did you do?"
Right.
And he's
He
starting
also
to become,
notices he also notices the claw marks down the side of her car as he's
yeah,
and
those
when
claw
he's
marks.
coming up to the house.
And he sees the bullet hole in the thing. He moves the picture to try to cover it up so that you know he can figure out what to do about this situation. But it doesn't take long for Lucas or for Tom to kind of figure out and to discover things because he's like, well, where's Anna? He's.
Yeah. Yeah, he drives her car to where she said she was staying. He goes, "Where is she?" He's like, "You." The guy's like, "You tell me. You're driving her car around." Um,
Hmm.
so like, just a dead end, right? Um, then we have while Tom's out doing all this, Lucas is in the woods now with the twins and Mariah again,
Yeah.
and they're chasing him because he punched one of the twins in the nose after
Right in the face.
they're
Yeah,
right in
that's
the
right.
face.
I was so
Yeah,
excited.
yeah, it was
She
so good.
just said something, and he just like
he just
nailed her, just
yeah
bloody nose immediately. It was, it was like,
yeah.
oh, he punched her in the face. I wrote it down. I'm like, oh my god.
So they all get separated. Mariah gets separated from the twins, and she's trying to find Lucas to like seemingly have a actual conversation, but maybe to trap him. We don't
Right.
quite know, and we don't get to find out because the witch discovers her with a giant rock and bashes her head in.
Yeah.
And then Lucas discovers the body and is just beside himself, crying, freaking out, was completely lost it. The
The
girls,
twins approach.
yep, and they
They're
run
like
off.
GTFO. They
Yeah,
don't like it
he's like
because he's
screaming.
crying. He's distraught.
And he's screaming,
They
"Help
assume he
me!"
did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they assume he did it. Yeah, he definitely gets brought in by the sheriff,
Hmm.
who there's a scene with him questioning him.
Yeah.
And then Tom knows. Tom's trying to get in to see him. They won't let him in.
Right.
Um, and then the kid Lucas, right? He kind of has these like blackout wake up moments, or at least it happens a second time,
Hmm.
and he kind of comes to see that the door to the interrogation room's ajar,
Yeah.
and he just walks out to a
The
bloodbath.
siren's going
Oh,
off.
the sirens are going off too. Yeah, the
The
alarms are going off.
alarm. Yeah.
Yeah, he goes out, and it's every cop in the place is dead,
Yeah.
including the sheriff. Um, we don't know how, because it didn't show
Hmm.
us. It's
Right.
just the state of the room. And he just leaves and he goes home.
Yeah.
Um,
So the one scene that I think is important that we didn't discuss that kind of indicates more things about how this is all transpiring is you see them playing Slapface again. The
oh yeah,
brother, because the house is a mess from the struggle with the monster and Anna.
right,
He comes home and sees this mess, and so they play Slapface. They're playing Slapface, and Lucas is looking over Tom's shoulder and sees the witch coming, and it's being impacted
right,
by what is happening to Lucas.
yeah,
It moves its head whenever he gets hit,
yeah,
and so there's sort of like this, like it can feel his pain type thing, and he embraces Tom
right. It
and
tells me,
says, "I love you. I'm so sorry. I love you. I love you. I just want like."
yeah, and
And
so the witch backs off.
yes. And like and then all this other stuff happens. But that's a pivotal scene to kind
Yeah,
of clue in what's happening, but also to see like, he's still trying to fight this darkness.
yeah. To touch on that, something we did overlook, the before Anna, before she's killed, does try to have a talk with Tom about Slapface, and
Right.
basically calls him out for abusing his little brother and says that it's not right, and he's just like it's how we cope with
Yeah.
the pain inside, the anger
Yeah.
inside. It's how we deal with it. It's our thing.
Right.
Leave it alone.
But I mean,
That's how we get any explanation as to what they're doing besides, just slapping each other. Or at
yeah.
least, that's, obviously from Tom's perspective, which is not the perspective that we care about, right?
Hmm.
We care about Lucas here,
Yeah, well, and he's
and
the
so
one
did Anna.
initiating it. He says we have to do it. We have to do it. Like, and obviously, he's coercing Lucas to go along with it. Lucas doesn't have a choice. Tom is saying this is what we're doing,
Right.
and whether it's to, and that's the one thing that it happens a little bit earlier where they're talking about the mother and father passing. Like, they all are in a car crash. Is that what it was? Where there was water involved, correct?
I think
And
they were
they
all in the
get out.
crash. Yeah, kids get out.
They get out, and they thought that she and I think the father were right behind, but they didn't get out.
Right.
Is what we're believing. So it's like they're holding on to that, and clearly they both are dealing with it still, and this is how maybe Tom has structured a way to maybe almost like self-flagellate to feel pain or to like just like self-harm type
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But now he's getting his brother to go along with it because he's forcing it upon him. He has to process and deal with it sort of as a penance with him, an unwilling participant. So there's a lot of ways to interpret it or to try to understand. It's clear that there's still processing and dealing with it, the loss and the grief and the trauma of it. Clearly not the right way for Tom to be doing right now. Um, so yeah, so the bloodbath at the sheriff's station,
Yep.
and then Lucas just pieces out. I think he just gets back to the house. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He goes back to the house, and this is where like the showdown, right?
Hmm.
Or the climax, where uh, So does he destroys the house on his own, Lucas does, right? At this point, and then Tom comes home to find it destroyed. Um, and
Yeah, I'm trying to think back, and this is I feel bad now. Like I'm trying to remember beat for beat how the ending occurs, and I'm having a hard time.
well,
Uh,
they definitely play Slapface again,
mhm,
right? Oh no 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 no. Okay, so the witch comes out. Lucas has the gun.
yeah.
Lucas has the gun. The witch comes out. The witch is playing Slapface with Tom, and every time she hits him, it knocks him across the room.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and I think he does fire some
Yeah.
shots.
Lucas starts shooting at the witch, and it's not being
Uh,
impacted by it.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm pretty sure it hits and kills Tom. The
Right.
bullets,
Yeah.
and we'll explain, and we'll my theory will come here in a second as to how that all
Right.
happened.
Yeah, but that's how it's occurring. There's a confrontation at the
Huh.
end with that, and the witch and the monster and Tom are doing their thing, and Lucas is trying to stop it by shooting at it.
Right.
And
And we know that the cops went back to the police station because there was a little um, scene where Tom walks past some cops, and you hear in the background, "Get back to the station. It's disgust. Jesus Christ, it's disgusting,"
yeah,
is what you hear. Um, and that's when
well, because Tom is at the hospital, and because Mariah's there, and Mariah dies. She's on life support, but then she
right,
passes. Her mother's grieving. They
yeah,
see it. They see the twins in the hall. They're all dealing with it, and Tom's just sitting there numb, that
right,
thinking that his brother did this.
right,
Uh, and so then that's when I think he overhears, and he ends up going back to the house.
right. And that's when all this happens. So then the police, obviously, they get to the station, find out Lucas is gone, so they go straight to the house, and
Yeah,
the cops come in and surround him. And then the final panel, if you will, is this close up of Lucas's face where he's crying, he's holding his now dead brother Tom, and this almost look of realization comes
yeah,
over him, and that makes him even sadder, I think, for a moment.
because he's like he's sad, but then there's the final tear. The tear that is shed
Yeah.
as it close up on him with the police lights
And I think
flashing on
and
his
I think
face.
that's the moment where he realizes everything that happened all at once. Like he gets this
Right.
moment of clarity just before the credits. And I really enjoyed like the end of this movie. Like it was very very good, very put together very well.
Hmm.
Especially
Yeah.
this
So
one shot.
yeah. So we're under the belief, or we're assuming, or we would want one would, is led to believe rather that this is Lucas
Yes.
projecting that this thing is a thing.
Yes, yes. I mean, absolutely, right? So what? Halfway through the movie, you're like, oh, this monster's not a real monster. This is definitely Lucas. And by the end of the movie, it is definitely revealed to be Lucas. At
Yeah.
least at least that's what I got from it.
Right.
Especially like he fires the bullets into the it definitely into the witch, and it kills his brother. So they go through him because she's not there, and then she kind of comes over and falls on the floor, and then when the cops come in, she's not there on the floor. So like they're definitely giving you the answer in that final scene if you didn't already think
Yeah.
that or kind of get to it on your own. Right, so he killed the dog, he killed Anna, he bashed Mariah in the head,
Yeah.
he then he shot his brother, and this is all like um, the grief, not processing grief appropriately.
Hmm.
The, um, he's the victim of bullying from his brother, from his peers, from this this girl who claimed to be his girlfriend or wanted to be his girlfriend. So like his only actual like quote unquote outlet for love in his life was also an antagonist here.
Right.
Well, another cool thing about the movie is that that panel fades to a message about
Yeah.
bullying being a problem and a hotline and all sorts
Yeah.
of other information, which I didn't see any of that coming. Also important to point out here that this was written and directed by the same person. This happens a lot in indie films, right? A guy has something to say. He wrote a script. He wants to make this movie. Somebody decides, okay, I'll give you some money to make this movie, and of course he directs it himself. Um, Another coincidence between this and The Last Thing Mary Saw is that was also written and directed by the same person. Um,
Not the same person, but the
Not,
same
yeah, but
person that wrote and directed
yeah,
the film.
exactly,
Yeah.
right,
And yeah, I think that that's what's great about this movie is that you can tell that there was a purpose or a meaning behind what the film was going to be about and how it was executed.
right,
And all of the genre in general, all of the other elements of the film are just aiding to creating a richer story that has all of the themes and subject matter wrapped into it that makes it a presentable manner where it's open to interpretation to some extent, but it's just obvious and it kind of gives you more depth and interest in a simple-ish idea, but it's just so well thought out and portrayed that it's much more engaging and it's more lasting because of that. And that's what I really like about it. As much as people crap on M Night Shyamalan, all of the cool uh, sappy type things that happen in the movie Signs, and even The Village for me, all of the things that like this meant this meant that makes it more of a heartwarming story
sure,
and that is more lasting. And I think that this does that, and it was to a really a great level of execution. It was a good film, and I really liked what it was talking about and how it was done. It seemed very natural, aside from the few caveats that we've already discussed. A very natural progression of the characters and the events that occur, and how you can interpret the actions of them to lead to the conclusion that the movie comes to. It's it's just solid.
yeah, yeah. I love how it was. It's a young kid who's the main character, the protagonist, right? And he's going through this horrible thing, and these bad things are happening to him, seemingly to him for the audience, right?
Hmm.
You've got the turn where it was him the whole time, but it doesn't stop you from feeling sorry for the main character and still wanting him to win, even
Yeah.
though it turns out he did these horrible things. You don't want him to lose. You want him to get the help that he needs at the end. And then you get
Right.
and then you get that hotline panel about bullying, and it's like, oh yeah, like I wasn't even thinking along those lines. And when that came up, like my brain just like rescanned the whole movie backwards,
Hmm.
and it
Sure.
was like, oh, what great, yes, great. This is more people should watch this. Like,
Sure.
just a big fan of the conclusion and what it did for everything behind it. Like, it definitely elevated, uh, the film at the end.
Yeah. 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 It was a good, it was just all around well told story with a good message. Uh, Good for a
Something
discerning
you don't
horror
get in
fan.
horror, right? Like that's
Yeah.
I think that's the word, another word I was looking for is refreshing. Like
Sure.
or just like not unique but like infrequent, like
Right. Well, it's sort of like how I felt about Lamb. That it's a generalized type thing where it's a kind of just about grief and nature, uh, and how people handle that kind of thing. And it's sort of just like a folklore esque fantasy fairy tale explanation of how characters would handle that decision. And so, it's just boiled down type thing. Yeah, it's not something that you see as often. Uh, the horror film with like more like something to say. There's
yeah,
obviously a ton out there, but it's just not
right,
as common a solution for a horror film to have is to be about something.
right, exactly.
So cool. I mean, it shot in New York, and couple years ago, and now it's up on Shutter. I'm super stoked to find things like this that Shutter keeps bringing out. I
Oh
was a
yeah,
huge fan once I started getting that subscription, so I'm super happy with Slapface. It was a great watch.
absolutely. I would probably give it a. I'm gonna give it a six. I would give it a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, wavering somewhere between it's definitely it's not it's more better than a five, and so a six I think is a fair score. It's not going to be something that's a top tier thing I'll watch a lot, but I'm will completely endorse it and would say that it's worth watching for anyone that's a fan of horror or films with more meaning behind them.
Yeah, yeah. I would definitely recommend people watch it. I might watch it one more time in my life when I'm showing it to someone, but
Right?
probably not more than that. So I think that's a
Yeah.
solid six.
Yeah, and it's just a different kind of thing. Like it's interesting. There are films that I think should just be watched, and uh, I'm glad that I've seen, but I probably won't ever see again because it was an experience, and you've already kind of logged that memory in there, and you think of it from time to time. This is gonna fall into that kind of category
Yeah, exactly.
more often than not.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. So let's move on to our second feature, the last thing Mary saw. Um, this is Eduardo Vitelletti and is a period drama taking place in colonial Long Island,
Yep.
South Hold, New York. So really cool, and it's not intentional, but it's cool that we're in New York. The two of us are located in Central New York, and that these films are in New York. It's kind of like a little bit of a buy-in that makes me a little bit happier, excited that the setting is familiar.
I do I love it every time I see New
Yeah.
York in a movie.
So this is broad stroke here. This is A24 esque period drama about a uh, forbidden love
Forbidden Love,
in
super. Yep, a super religious family. Well, it's 18.
Puritan type
Yep, 18
family.
1843 is the year, so it's fits right in with that, like, you know people weren't really questioning God or religion back then, and if
Hmm.
they were definitely like shunned or outsiders.
Yeah.
Um, especially,
Science and medicine just was not understood the way that it is. It was very basic. And yes, God and religion were sort of like the way to guide people's lives
oh yeah,
and see everything through that prism because it was just it was known, and things outside of it were just not okay.
right,
It was not good. There's too many hardships already, and so
yeah,
it was a way to just narrow your focus and to just like not let your mind or other things occur and take you off that path, and
yep,
to be less than righteous.
yeah,
So
and and
yeah,
you
so I
and
mean
you
that's
you believe in God, so you believe all the scripture, and so that's how you live your life. And
yeah. Um, So this movie's cool. It is kind of separated into chapters. The chapters follow along and are titled, which is not necessarily. It's just sort of like a neat little luster that's put into there as far as how to interpret or read the events that are going to be occurring in each of those chapters. But they all relate to a book that Mary and Eleanor are in possession of. These are like little sub chapters and poems or stories that are in this book that exists in the film. And so the movie opens where Mary is blindfolded. You see blood coming from the bandage, and there's a group of men that are interrogating her, so to speak, about the events that transpired the night prior, or you know, it doesn't matter how they define it, but they're interrogating her to try to understand what just occurred. And you don't know. You're going in blind. You just know that something happened, and they're very leery of her because they've got weapons drawn on her,
right,
and they
the first thing they do is make her say the Lord's Prayer with
right.
two rifles bearing down on her. She obviously
Hmm.
doesn't know she's blindfolded. Um, and I think they're waiting to see if she can't, because the devil
Right.
might be inside her. and if
Yeah,
she doesn't say the Lord's Prayer, they're just gonna kill her. Like she's just dead.
yeah. It's just
um,
sort of like just a direct way to understand the nature of life at the moment. It's just it's not spoken what things are. It's just you understand it through that visual that this is
oh
definitely
yeah,
this thing, and they don't have to say anything else. So right away though, with the way that I can't, we talked about it with Slapface, the way it starts. This movie starts in the same kind of way in that it has amazing lighting and set design. That's the one thing with this film. It is oftentimes illuminated by candle.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of work with shadows in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Um, Always half, sometimes even three-quarter darkness in
Hmm.
from scene to scene.
Lots of
Really,
close-ups.
yeah, yeah, really excellent work with lighting in this movie.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. It's another character, just the way that it's shot, and it just helps to reinforce the darkness or the starkness of the landscape or the world in general. That it's your the 10 by 10 room around you with the other couple people in it. There's not any big world out there. This small little house, which is where the whole film takes place, in this one little house,
Yep,
and right outside it in the chicken coop, that's the whole universe that these people know, and nothing else is ever seen or talked about. And it just there's a claustrophobia because of it, and it kind of just the immersion really gets dialed in because of the way that they build the whole story from here. And so this happens right away, where you just get that this is going to be that kind of piece. And because it's a period piece, the costumes are all just it's
yeah,
you're just already in the universe right away.
oh
And I
yeah,
love that about it. I'm already in there.
yeah. I totally agree. So we find out what the conflict is pretty much right away, um,
Yeah,
as they're being corrected, right?
yeah.
Um, Mary is in love with the female housemaid, um,
Eleanor.
Eleanor, played by Isabel Furman, who
Hmm.
is the orphan in Orphan, which we got to see first kill. But anyway, Stephanie Scott plays Mary, for anyone who cares. And the first time uh, they're caught or punished for it, I think it's just Eleanor, right? Who has to kneel on the rice, or do they both
I want
have
to say
to?
the first. No, I think the first time they're both doing it.
They're both
There's a
doing it.
correction, but like they're talking about them leaving or separating, or Mary going somewhere, or Eleanor going somewhere. But they're like, well, let's try to correct things before we separate or we get rid of this caretaker. I can't remember the circumstances of someone leaving or whatever, but
Yeah, I
they're like,
think I
let's
think they're
forego that for now.
yeah, I think they were gonna try and send Eleanor to another house, like sell her to
Okay.
another house
Right.
to be
But
a
we
house.
couldn't until we get this out of our system, so to speak, or
Right,
mitigate this,
right,
because
yeah.
then it'll look poorly on them that they've,
If they send her to
foisted
another
this
house,
upon them.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And so, yeah, I always thought that this was a thing that you did with grits. Wasn't this a scene where you kneel on grits, and that's really the ultimate thing? It's either in a book or another show or film where they do that, but uh, they're using rice in this, where they're kneeling on rice, reciting a prayer or something to that effect, and that's their penance
Yep.
to try to flog them,
Yeah,
sort of passively for
yeah,
their behavior and their sins, and to repent.
yeah, and it looks super uncomfortable,
Yeah.
like like horrible.
Hmm.
Um, and you eventually find out the like long-term negative effects of it, whether it's true or not. Like there's another character who went through correcting. We'll get to that later, but like, oh man, I never want to kneel on rice.
I know. I kind of like I feel like I should try this just to see
Yeah,
how
yeah.
awful it
Just
is.
I was thinking about that through the whole movie. I'm like, how, is it really that bad? Like, it
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, it's got to be bad. Like, I'm sure it hurt like hell.
Yeah. Is it gotta be white rice? Can it be brown rice? What
Yeah.
about wild rice?
Is it just yeah, yeah. Now you're
I've got
getting
all of that
crazy.
rice in the
Right.
kitchen. I'll go try it tonight. Anyways, not to make light of it.
Yeah.
So, but that's what's going on, and there's not a whole lot else that's going to be happening in this film, and like
Right.
there's other things that are going to go on, but like that it's again it's a limited scope. This is about this love that they have and they cannot have it, and how are they going to navigate this world. And so you're already intrigued and you already feel for the characters because they're already punished, and you know as a viewer definitely now how messed up this is, and you are already invested and care about them, and so you're just kind of watching events transfold, and you're already but you have a lump in your throat because you see at the start of the movie that it's just Mary with this blindfold, bleeding, and being questioned that something bad happened, and
Yeah.
so you're sort of waiting and anticipating, and there's just building this tension, a la A24 slow burn, where there's
Oh
just
yeah.
this thing that's just going to go and go and go, and you're just waiting the for things to happen, and it's a great ride the whole time.
Oh yeah. So what happens? We get there's not a lot of action beats, so it's gonna be rough to
No.
outline to play by play this one. Um, but we have the brother, the little brother, who's kind of nosy, kind of spies
Hmm.
on them a couple times here and there.
Yes.
Um, they get caught again before they go to the chicken coop, or do they go right to the coop?
I can't
I
remember. I think that they kind of get caught. Like they know that they kind of have a feeling that the brother might be watching them because he's watching them from through the grate, and he has the splinter that happens, and they kind
right.
of know. But I don't think they're necessarily going to be corrected again just yet.
Right.
Um,
So
it's
yes,
not until the coop, I
the coop.
believe.
Right. So uh, Eleanor, who is a servant, is having a conversation with the other servant, the one who I actually just mentioned, the one whose knees have been broken by
Yeah,
kneeling. Yeah,
the
by kneeling
guard
on
for the house.
rice.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So basically, his job is just to stand outside and to keep track of what's going on outside.
Hmm.
She
Yeah,
brings him. Yeah, she brings him
a
some kind of
loaf.
porridge first, right?
Yes,
He
bring. Well, yeah, she offers him porridge,
he makes like an
and
off-color comment, like, "What did I do to deserve such a feast?"
yeah, he says to feed it to the chickens,
Yeah,
and that's where she gets the idea that maybe that could be a respite for them because the
right,
house is compromised because the kid and everyone else, obviously.
right. So she does strike a deal where she'll bring him bread if they can sleep in the coop together at night and without anybody knowing about it.
Right.
And this does go on for a couple nights. They get away with it until the little brother does bring he brings the grandmother out, right? The matriarch, who's kind of the she's kind of the antagonist here. So there's obviously a father to Mary and his
Hmm.
wife, and there's probably a couple uncles. Maybe Mary has an older brother, but maybe they're all just cousins and uncles
Right.
and aunts because there's a couple other adult women in the house. But there's like 10 of them total, 10 or 11. There's a lot of people in this house.
Well, you got to think about the final the the dinner that they have. So
Right.
there's the mother at the head, the grandmother,
The
the
grandmother,
matriarch,
the matriarch, yep.
seemingly a grandmother. And then it's her father, and then the potential two uncles, and both uncles have a wife with them. I think
Yeah,
if we're calling them uncles, if that's who they
sure,
are.
sure.
And then the kid, and then Eleanor and Mary.
Yeah,
I think that in that final, I think that that's it's relatively limited. But yeah, there's a handful of people, but
right.
it's limited.
So,
Um,
yeah, but they all kind of look to the matriarch. I think this is important. They look to the grandmother to lay like final judgment on anything that happens. Like
mhm,
XYZ took place. We all know that it's bad, but we're not gonna do anything about it because that's your job, Grandma. And she lays down the law
right.
for the family as the eldest. And I mean maybe that's just the way things were back then, but that's definitely the way they are in the story.
Hmm.
So the
So the
yeah
coop.
the coop. The kid brings the grandma out to the coop, and they get caught again, so they have to be corrected again.
Right.
Um,
Uh,
what do they do
the
this
the
time?
scene. Well, the scene in the coop. I think that this is where. Uh, I think they might have just isolated uh, Eleanor in this one after the coop.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
So this is where
But
oh, go ahead.
go ahead. No, you're fine.
I was gonna say this is where Eleanor gets the idea that she has to take things up a notch, up a level, because
Hmm.
she feels like she's gonna die in this house after this second correction, and as far as she's concerned, she's not doing anything wrong. She's in love. Mary's not doing anything wrong. She's in love. The two of them have these plans to run away together. Um, which Mary is fine with just running away, and that makes sense for Mary because it's her family. But Eleanor, she doesn't feel like they'll be safe. Like they'll
Yeah.
try to track her down, or they'll always be on the run if they run away. Um, so she needs some kind of uh, finality to their parting.
Right.
Um, and so she gets this little ball from the guard,
Yeah.
and she's supposed to test it on the chickens.
Hmm.
And it's just some kind of poison, right? Just kills the chicken.
Right. It's a poison berry. Seemingly
Yeah,
looks like a blueberry, more or less. The chicken gets it. The chicken is dies,
dies.
and
Yep,
so they use this. The next scene where she has the idea, she's going to put this in tea.
yep.
Uh,
She puts it in tea. We don't really see what happens next, like where the tea goes or who drinks the tea. But in the morning, the grandmother character is dead, and now we have to do her funeral
yeah.
rites.
Mary comes upon it, sees that she's just dead in bed. The teacup is there. It's all broken. She does some quick cleanup, and in the roles of how they do a funeral here, the wake and everything, you do not talk
Yeah,
the
24
day
hours.
of the
Yeah,
funeral,
full
and
day.
like, yeah, 24 hours. And so this changes everything. So everyone's just going to be in mourning. There will be dinner. They're gonna all the chicken coop is bad because the berry, and so they don't have, like, they say there's a rodent that got in there. So now chickens have to be acquired from elsewhere, which we'll get into in a second. But uh, and the matriarch is just laid out in the house, and they're going to be having a meal that evening to put her at peace. And this is, I guess, the other guy comes, uh,
Right.
the
Uh,
possible pastor or whomever, the guy that's doing the final rites. He's like a guest in the house. He doesn't live there, but he's there uh, to help. Either he was a grandfather or whomever. They don't really get into people's titles and who they actually are, but
right.
he's there at the head of the table in lieu of the matriarch as sort of like one guiding the wake that they're having for the matriarch.
Right. Um, so they have to acquire chickens from elsewhere. So they get word out to a traveler, some kind of
Mm-hmm.
salesman, and he brings a sack of chickens, played by Rory Culkin.
Uh
Um,
huh.
and man, he's just good, right?
Yeah.
like like he's excellent. He was so good in this too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he shows up. He's got like a almost like a birthmark covering this
Mm-hmm.
part of his face, right? It's discolored and dark red,
Yeah.
and he exchanges some words with the guard, and then he comes in and he meets Eleanor at the side entrance, where they're going to make a trade. The guard also gives him a little pouch to give to Eleanor, and we
Right.
can assume there's more berries in there.
Right. So the chickens are given, and he's like, "Well, let me help you with the chickens," and that's where he's starts to talk about his backstory, where he starts to talk about his mother and how she reacted to the birthmark and how he was taken around to cure this deformity that he had, things that he endured as a child because of what he could not control about himself. And so there's sort of like a parallel here where this is a character who had a similar scolding or corrective behavior of something that was not his own fault. It just is who he is. The pain that he endured because of something is sort of paralleling what Mary and Eleanor are now going through. And it was just a great scene, sort of a monologue
Oh yeah,
with Eleanor. Yeah.
yeah. It was excellent. So then he shows off that he's got the pouch, and
Mm-hmm.
he's a traitor, so he wonders what she's going to give him for this pouch, um, and he rapes her.
Oh, so right. This is the
Like
thing
it.
that we glazed over this, but this is important. At the coop, when they
Oh,
finally see them,
right.
Eleanor can't talk, not
Oh,
because of
right.
the death of the matriarch, but because the matriarch pinched the throat,
Yes.
fingers
And
on the throat, and you just see a visual of her floating in air,
right.
suspended, and the matriarch is grabbing her throat
Just
in
holding
the
her by the
coop.
throat. Yep.
Mary's just watching this happen. Eleanor is suffering here. She's gasping, and like you think she's just choking, but she's just barely touching or whatever, leaving two little pinpricks almost with
Yeah.
fingertips. And now she's lost the ability to speak.
Yes. Right.
So when Rory Culkin's character is offering the trade, he's insinuating that in order to get this, there needs to be something between the two of us sexually, and she cannot stop him. She
Right.
can't voice that opposition or anything, and she knows that to get to what she wants with what he's offering, she has to go along with it.
Right.
So she's now enduring this humility, this uh, in order to
Yeah.
get what she wants.
Of like a horrific sequence of events, and I mean, you're the way you root for the protagonist through the film. There's obviously two. It's Mary and Eleanor as a duo, and you're just this scene like almost kills you. Like
Yeah,
obviously it's not graphic and it doesn't really show anything, but like just you knowing that it's happening is
right.
like is terrible.
Well, and that's
Um,
the thing about these kind of films and horror in general. It's the things that they don't show that they just insinuate or talk about in the way that they frame it. Everything about the way that the film is shot and all the stakes and what's occurring, it heightens this experience that much more because it's been building and building and building. You care more and more the things that are happening to them. You want them to get out, and you see just another awful thing that has to be endured in order to try to have hope for the better tomorrow. And it's it is difficult to sit through it, but it's yeah, it helps to immerse how desperate and trying the times are that they're in.
yeah. So now she has the bag, and he offers to help with the chickens, and this is where she just grabs a knife and cuts his finger off, because she's like, well, I did the horrible thing, I got what I wanted, now I don't care what happens, get out of here. Like
Yeah,
he even like
yeah,
screams a little bit, and there's a tussle, and the family doesn't even get up to see what's going on in the kitchen.
right.
Mary
Well,
does.
they don't want to break. They don't want to break
the
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 wake.
morning, yeah,
the
the
what?
morning.
Well, yeah, the morning that they're going. They cannot react normally to things that are occurring because it's because it's sacrilege.
Right.
This is what you do.
Yeah.
That is more important. Some crazy shit is happening in the other room. It's weird. There's some noises and screaming, but that should not be happening. But I follow the rules,
Yeah.
and nothing is going to stop me from doing this the way it's supposed to be get done. Uh,
All right.
almost to a fault.
So
So
also
so he runs off, missing a finger.
also
Right.
while all this is happening, we have the family, and they're all kind of giving, they all have like a moment with the matriarch, and the finger is twitching,
Yeah.
and
And and it has turned.
no, not yet, not yet.
Not
So
yet.
the
That's
pre
later on. Okay.
the well, this is it's right now. It's right now. The priest or the whomever this new person we don't recognize, takes a knife and grabs the finger and
Right,
is
right.
gonna cut it off, but then
Because he
it's
sees it twitching, and he's
because of the
like,
switching.
"Why is it twitching? This
But
is making everyone not want to
yeah,
be quiet."
but because he when he touches the finger, it starts to turn black. So he
Yeah.
lets go of it, and then the whole finger turns black. And then
Mhm.
he's like, all right, well, I'm not gonna mess with this finger now.
And it stops moving.
Yeah, so then he backs off. Um, and now that the matriarch just has a black finger, which is weird. I don't quite
Mhm.
understand what the symbolism is there, but I'm sure it meant something to the writer. Um, one,
Well,
you
and
know,
by the end, there's a thing that occurs, and so
right. So maybe that was all it was. Maybe that was it was just set up for
just to
that.
signify
Yeah,
that
yeah,
this is what happens.
yeah.
So yeah, Roy Culkin's
So
character evacuates, and you see dinner's concluding.
before he leaves, he grabs a roll of bread. He grabs a loaf on his
Yes,
way out.
the love. Yeah,
Yep.
uh,
So yeah, dinner's
tea
concluded.
is being prepared.
Yep, she's
You
making
see
tea.
the tray of all the cups. Mary has come back in there now with Eleanor, and she knows what she's acquired because Mary is assisting in serving this meal. She's not grieving with the family. Her penance is now you're sort of apart. You're at the back of the room, standing and just waiting for us to do what we're doing. We'll deal
Right.
with you after this has done. She, you just all you see is the teacups. You don't see what occurs. You know that there's a bag of berries. You see all the berries, the poison, but you don't know what's going to happen. And so, uh, Mary brings out the tray of the teacups, and you can hear her shaking them. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like she's like shivering, and you hear the rattling. She sets them down, and then she serves everyone. And the kid is
She's
just like sugar,
she
sugar.
serves him last too, and she served
Yes,
everybody
yeah,
else in pairs. She served him alone and last.
yes,
But
yes. And he just sugars the hell
he
out of his
fills
tea.
this thing with sugar because they can't talk, so they can't tell him to stop.
Right,
And he knows
right.
it. He knows it.
And the father, but the father is just slams on the table, takes his tea, gives him his tea.
Right. And this is Mary's father because this is Mary's younger brother.
Yes. Uh, and then they have their tea, and I'm trying to recall how things begin here.
So it was the head of the table, which I think was the priest or the guy who we don't recognize, the older
Right.
looking gentleman who starts to it almost looks like he stands up from the table and then it
Hmm.
almost looks like he's about to have a heart attack, like he's fallen over a little bit and then somebody helps him back up. But then blood just comes out of his mouth. And then he falls and then it goes to the woman to his right. Blood comes out of her mouth and she kind of collapses forward. And then they all just start to have blood coming out of their mouths, including the little brother.
Yeah, the
And
kid.
now and the father does not die. So
Right.
we know that she spared her younger brother when she was divvying out the tea, but because of the swap, and then of course the father didn't drink the sugar tea. He's just the look on his face is just like as everyone is dead except
Yeah.
for Eleanor and Mary, um, who are crying and holding each other and about to go, right, trying to get out of there.
Hmm.
Um, so they start to have a conversation with the father, and out of nowhere, a gunshot kills the father, and the door
Hmm.
opens, and it's Rory. Um, he traded the loaf of bread to the guardsman for his pistol, which
Hmm.
only had two bullets.
Yeah. And so he's
And
reloading. He's talking. To Eleanor and to Mary, and he's reloading,
yep,
and there's waiting, and because it's an old flintlock type thing where he's
yep, and so now this scene is strange. I guess as a teenage girl, like you wouldn't know that the gun couldn't couldn't be shot twice. But once he started reloading it, at that point, I don't understand why they don't run or
Okay.
fight or fight. It is 2v1, and we know that I mean, they just killed a bunch of people, so like, they're. I don't feel like their nerves are an issue here. Now, I get that they're telling a story, and you got to
Yeah.
hear the bad guy's dialogue before the showdown, right? Or like his
Right.
his like whatever he has to say has got to be said and got to be heard by somebody. Um, but this is the only moment in the film where I was just like, that didn't make sense. Everything up to this point, though, I was totally in. I was,
Yeah.
um,
You, your suspension of disbelief wavered for a moment.
yeah, it was just it was for a moment, and
Yeah.
okay, so he
You're gonna have
does,
to help me because again, I'm faltering on how the final things transpire here.
so yeah, well he shoots Eleanor in the head with his second bullet,
Right.
and
Hmm.
now well, they offer him the house. They're like, keep the house. We'll just let us leave. And
Yeah.
he's getting revenge for getting his finger cut off. Which another thing is like, well, I mean, you did just rape her, so that was the finger getting cut off was revenge for the rape, dude. Like, you're not.
Call it a day.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah,
got
yeah,
let off
yeah.
easy.
You
Yeah.
got she let you steal the bread too. Like, come on. Why'd you come? Why like why'd you even come back? Um, so she's having a conversation just with Mary, and so Mary says, "Who called you to the house?"
Right. Yeah.
Because
She's yes.
because nobody else could talk. If nobody could talk, how did you get here? Who called you here? And he doesn't get to answer the question,
Because
but
what she's
that's
asking.
the matriarch who was presumably dead to this point sits up in her like display. Um, she comes out, and how does Rory get dispatched, or does he just leave?
That's where I'm like so frustrated because I was so
I'm
excited and happy with the conclusion of the film, but now I just don't recall how it occurred.
yeah,
Um,
I'm a little fuzzy on what happens with Rory if he just left, um, and she was there with the grandmother, or if the grandmother took Rory out. I'm assuming he just left because I think I'd remember if
yeah, I
she
know,
did.
but I mean, like, but again, then how does Mary get to where she's at? Oh, right, because so the matriarch
Well, it starts.
gouges her eyes.
Yeah, yeah. So she starts talking. So the matriarch starts talking to her about um,
Mhm.
about how everything wrapped up, and I'm purposefully leaving some stuff out here that we'll talk about once the entire plot's revealed. Um, and she says that the punishment for this crime was this one thing that I can't remember, and that they were blinded. And that's when she grabs her head and sticks her thumbs in her eyes. And that
Mhm.
kind of ends the flashbacks. That brings us to the interrogation room, and the story's been told. To where the detectives or the investigators kind of look at each other and go, "Yeah, well, that's about sums that up. Yep, yep, yep." And then they walk her out to a tree that's already been fitted with a hanging noose, and they put her up there and kick the thing out from under her. And oh, they take her blindfold off first to show that her eyes have been gouged.
Mhm. Yep.
Uh, and while she's just hanging there, we get a close up of the finger that is now black, and it's
Mhm.
twitching.
Yeah.
Um, and then it goes to credits. So, what do we think about that first? Um, so my first thought was, all right, so maybe the witch or so it's once again based on witch, right? Just like the other one, or a witch, some kind of.
Yeah.
Obviously, if she can come back to life, or she was never really dead, there's got to be something going on. Um, So now did she transfer to Mary? And if she did, why did she guide her out? That doesn't make sense. Or does Mary have this power being a woman in this bloodline?
Mm,
Was my second thought. So she has
mm,
this power to come back, and she just got gouged because that was her punishment for what she did.
right.
Um, so I like once again I like an open-ended, and a lot of independent films do kind of like leave questions unanswered like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
what
mean,
what did you think?
well, that's. I thought the same kinds of things. Part of me, was just like, well, then why? Why? How? Or why? And so when you start to think about it, but it leaves it there where you start to think and question events that happened and uh, what led from one thing to another. But and it's just fun to kind of play with and to kind of ruminate about. But the majority of the film of like the experience of what they were going through and suffering in order to try to have it and it fell apart was really the more interesting and the meat and the fun of the movie or the interesting story of the movie. The stuff with the witch was like sort of like the fun horror element, and they were sort of just like mashed together in a way a little bit. Like it wasn't necessary. It's almost as if they were two different kind of genre movies, like a dramatic love story, but now let's find a way to have a horror witch element into it. I liked them, the marriage of the two together, but it's almost like they are two different things that are just presented in the same film, and they don't always necessarily like mesh. They're just
Right.
there. I
Sure.
like it, like I said, but uh, so I don't have a whole lot of like. I'm not too wrapped up in the whole witch element after viewing. Like I like
Right.
that it's there. It doesn't change or really leave me in a certain way that makes me one way or another. It's just sort of an element that's there at the end. It's like okay, yeah. I
Okay.
like what you're saying as far as interpretation, though. It
Right. So my big thing for the movie was the book.
yeah.
So the three chapters were each named after stories in the book.
Hmm.
She actually reads one or two of them out loud during the movie, um,
Yeah, the
which,
first one I can't remember is something about temptation in the house or such and such. The second one is a monstrous birth,
yep,
and the third one is the old lady of Bethabar.
yeah, and that's the one where the main characters of that story, one of them something bad happened to, I can't remember, and the other one was the one who got blinded. So that's where the witch or the matriarch character uh, delivered that punishment to Mary from that story. And now
Hmm.
we have those three chapters, we have those three stories in the book. There's a moment where the matriarch references the book at the end when she kills Mary, or when she blinds Mary, that her father was the one who brought it to the house.
Yeah.
There's a moment earlier in the film, I think in the second chapter, where the father um, apologizes to the matriarch for being the one to bring it to the house, and says that he believes that the book was to bring the death of the family with it, or that the book was going to cause death, um,
Mm.
something like that. As it is, the book, the stories are blasphemous. It's because the first story I think is about the the two women falling in love, which is what actually happens in the movie. It's the
Hmm.
noble woman and the maid. Now, right, it's the noble woman that gets blinded in the third story, and that's how that happens. So, you know, it was very interesting the parallel, right? And like
Yes.
I
Yeah.
have to wonder if that book is a real book that maybe the film was based on, or if
Mm.
the book was created um, so that the film could draw the parallels to it throughout the movie. Um,
Right.
and it's just very interesting to me that this this item would be the centerpiece, and also like obviously that's where the chapter names were drawn from, and the passages get referenced a few times, and I don't think it was in your face, right? It wasn't like this is the book and everything that's happening and this is why everything is happening, and it wasn't like beating you over the head with it. I think it was definitely very subtle, and it was something that like and you get this with like independent films, right? Like
Yeah, it's all
it's
very artfully done. It's a
yeah,
neat way to kind of layer things and have more meaning. Everything
yeah,
in this kind of a smaller, lower budget or indie film, it's like with any directorial type thing, because it's a smaller scope, there's intent in every possible thing in the film.
right.
This is there for a reason, and you can trust it for sure in something with this kind of a limited scope.
Absolutely, and you have to like once again, like true art, it's really left up to your interpretation, and you
Hmm.
kind of you kind of have to like maybe watch it a second time to get it all, or
Yeah.
really just really pay attention and just like try to experience it all, to really enjoy it, right? As we were talking about before we started shooting tonight, the ratings on this movie versus the ratings on Slapface, um, I could understand how Slapface would get a higher rating from a casual audience,
Yeah.
whereas I enjoyed the last thing about Mary, or the last thing Mary saw more. Um, I just, I think that, this movie's better from a critical perspective than Slapface was, right?
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
I would agree. And it's not that it's just inherently better. It's just, for me, I am more drawn to a horror that has these kind of elements. Uh, at least with the way that these two are handled. It, I'm more prone to like something like The Last Thing Mary Saw versus Slapface. Both good in different sets, but like there's other films that we've talked about, a la Scream or Halloween. Halloween Ends coming up, that are going to be fun. I love those movies, but whenever it's when looking at these two, I would prefer Last Thing Mary Saw. And yeah, I think it's just that it's a more difficult, it's more austere, it's limited. There's less going on. It's a slow burn. These are all things that can completely throw off a viewer that is not into that genre of horror. It's pretty polarizing where, it's one, you got to be into horror, and then two, to be into this kind of horror, it's an even smaller niche crowd that
yeah.
it's just not doesn't have the broader appeal.
Yeah, I think the period, uh, like the period drama aspect of it, it will also
Yeah.
turn people off.
Yeah, that too. Like this
Yeah,
is a niche within a niche within a niche
yeah,
market of film. So, which I love.
right.
But yeah, I know that I'm in a minority.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, so I would say the last thing about Mary definitely gets a 7 from me, a solid 7.
I agree with that.
I'm definitely gonna watch it again. Um,
Yeah.
and
Well, and then yeah,
when
because
I
I'm
do,
frustrated with the way that the things transpire at the end. Like it annoys me because I loved it when I saw it, and when I did the double feature, I was so happy to have seen it second because I would have been a little bit let down with the pace and the style of Slapface after having seen this. I
right.
like this being the second one because I think it's more thoughtful in a different kind of way. Uh,
Yeah, I definitely also watched this one second, and was very glad to. And yeah, the ending once again is kind of muddled because I it was late and I went to bed like right
Yeah.
after.
Well, and it's just the
Um,
way that it happens. Like, and the beats aren't as important, but yeah, it's there's a lot to parse through or to chew on with how the events happen. And I really am interested in a second viewing to kind of go through the book and
yeah,
find those kind of
no,
beats.
exactly, exactly. The next time I watch it, I am paying so much attention to that book because I
Yeah,
definitely think um, it tells the story before we get to watch it,
yeah,
because it is mimicking the the main plot, or the main just the story.
Yeah, and they
Uh,
read from it a little bit, but you have enough time to read it yourself
right,
while it's
right.
on the
And
screen.
there's some pictures too, so you definitely can get some information out of there.
Yeah, mm. It was enjoyable. Two fun movies.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would definitely put them on the watch list for anyone who hasn't seen them. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting as the year goes on. I'm looking forward to having our like. I almost want to create our list of things that we've watched slash reviewed throughout this year, and just continue to kind of put these films in a like a ranking of quality, and
Oh
just
yeah.
see how it progresses. Which one now goes above the rest, and so on and so forth, to kind of later inform our year in review. It'll be a neat thing to do.
Yeah, I know we're only in February, but next January, man, it's gonna it's gonna be great.
It's gonna be sick. Also, I can't help but like notice like you there something came in whenever you were talking about it, and so I just thought of like there's something about the last thing Mary saw. Like I just kept thinking about
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. I almost said there's something about Marriott.
yeah, I know. There's something about the last thing Mary saw.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
a funny film to reference because no one uh under the age of like 30 even knows what that movie is.
Yeah, that's funny to think about. And I mean, gosh, the things that they do in that movie and to talk about it,
Oh yeah,
I don't
like
think that it wouldn't land with today's audience
no,
probably.
no, it was very I'm sure very politically incorrect for today.
Yeah,
Uh yeah, absolutely. All
very
right.
reverent.
So, did you want to preview Nope?
Well, I think it's a very brief teaser,
Oh,
and I
it's yeah.
believe that there's just going to be a couple images, so I'm fine with previewing it if you want to. There's
All
supposed to be
right.
more, from what I understand, at the Super Bowl. There's going to be maybe a
Yep.
more full length trailer
All right. All right.
or
Well,
teaser.
let's do it. All
Okay,
right.
cool.
Here we go.
Now, sink.
Wait.
It's us. They treat us like family.
Run! Get out!
Yeah, that's a real teaser. That's not even. That
It's
was a,
mostly just his us and Get Out
yeah,
and a couple shots from this new film, and that's it.
yeah. That was a nice clickbait fake out, guys. You got us. um,
You still have to see Us, I suppose.
I definitely have not watched Us, which I feel very bad about. Um,
And
I will.
it's of course, but yeah, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah.
I felt comfortable watching that because I knew it wasn't going to be a ton. It was a small little teaser just to get you excited about it. But it's just another one of those films that's going to be coming out this year that we're looking forward to, and we're definitely going to be talking about.
Oh yeah. All right. So we have. I guess we have next week. What do you think?
Hmm. Well,
Um,
if we do find a way to watch some of the films that we had been wanting to watch, we're going to do that.
sure.
If we have a way to view Orphan First Kill, we will. Um, and a couple of the other things. But as we discussed whenever before we went live, there's a good handful of films that just got released on streaming platforms this week that are all unique, non-requel, non-remake movies.
Yes.
A la Bloody Disgusting put out their list of 10 films that you can just go watch right now
Yep.
that are new, interesting stories. So we very well may choose two of those.
Yeah. I think just to put it out there, if we don't do the orphan package
Mm-hmm.
or what was it, the
Just sounds ridiculous. Oh, at the Stoker Hills Fresh.
Sugar Hills Fresh. If we don't do Sugar
Yeah.
Hills Fresh and we don't get a chance to get in to watch Orphan First Kill, um, I think I would like to watch Student Body. I think Student Body looks good, and probably Kimmy, which is Steven Soderbergh's new movie. They'll both be on HBO Max. Actually, Student Body's on starting today, and Kimmy starts on Thursday. So we can definitely, at the very least, watch those two movies before next week.
All right.
Um, Steven Soderbergh, man, I can't remember the last time I watched one of his movies.
Sure.
Oh yeah, Sex Lies Videotape, 1989. Traffic,
Mm.
Aaron Brockovich. Has he done anything lately?
Not horror, right? But
I don't.
nothing horror.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it.
And really, like, bigger budget stuff is what he's known for. So that's what's like confusing to me is
Yeah.
that he is related to a smaller scope horror movie that's just hitting streaming. It's an odd
Yeah. Well,
thing to have occurred.
He did the Girlfriend Experience. That was the Sasha Grey movie.
Okay.
But he did like Ocean's 13, Ocean's 12, Ocean's 11. Okay.
Right.
He did Magic Mike. This is like, huh. All right.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
weird. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll see.
All right. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Um, so I guess in conclusion, I would say, yeah, Slapface is a 6. The Last Thing Mary Saw is a 7. I would definitely
Hmm.
put them on your list. If you haven't seen them, they're definitely both worth it. Um,
Yeah.
and it was like, we kind of picked these out of the blue. Like we didn't really.
Yeah, we did it. For them to have the related material, similar tones, but interesting kind of, small scope, it was really, it's a great double feature
It
to
was
watch.
yeah, it was a great double feature because they were similar in like you said a handful of ways, but they were very different movies.
Yeah.
Like it was
We got really, it was odd. It was a lucky kind of draw there.
yeah,
Because we weren't planning on watching them until over the weekend. We said these two look like they're going to be good options, and
right. And when
happily surprised.
when last week was oh man, Death Valley.
Yeah, between Death Fan and Advent Calendar. I mean, Advent Calendar was so unique and interesting and fun that it really did salvage our,
Oh
the
yeah.
spirit of the show.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I think we talked about Death Valley for like 30 minutes, and we talked about Advent Calendar for a full hour, so it was
right.
it worked out.
Yeah. I mean, look, this kind of long format type of like dissemination and conversation about the films is just a fun way for us each to relive it and get into it. We each kind of recall and mention things that for me I think gives greater meaning or more importance or recognition about the film. And I love that we're putting it out there for other people to get into because this is the kind of conversations that are, what we would normally be doing at the game table or when we go out for drinks or things like that, catch up on a film. But here we really get to stretch it and not bore maybe a person or two that isn't in the same kind of clique as we are with these films.
Yeah.
And so I love
Or
this long
yeah.
format type thing we're doing.
No, absolutely. And if even, even one person can listen to us and be like, "Oh, well, I'm going to check these movies out," and actually enjoy them the way we do, then it makes it all worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And
Absolutely.
yeah, for the podcast for the recently deceased, I'm Nate Roberts,
And I am Rodney Godek.
and we'll see you next week.
Take care.